Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode we're chatting with Brett and Lex from Brexwerx Games, a board game publisher based out of Arizona. Their flagship game, Holotype, is a fun, dynamic, science-based strategy game about paleontology. Brett, Lex, welcome to the binge. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks. It is awesome to have you guys. Man, ever since I was a kid, I absolutely loved paleontology and loved dinosaurs. And anytime I see any kind of game like that, it's like it's kind of like that squirrel thing, right? I do a double take and want to check it out. And this game was no different. And I found you guys on Kickstarter just perusing through the games that were up and coming, and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get these guys on the podcast. So
Great.
for starters, how do you guys know each other? What's the connection?
Well, I moved with my wife from Philadelphia to Arizona maybe about 4 years ago. And at that point, don't have any friends, need to start a whole new social circle. So best way to do that, the local gaming store. So found on Meetup, they had, it's our favorite, Funkatronic Rex in Phoenix. They have it was a weekly game night, so just start going there, meeting some friends, and then I met Brett. So it's unsurprisingly through gaming is how we met each other,
Love of board games.
Yep.
And then, what were you like? What do you guys do kind of outside of board games? Like, what's your, what do you guys do for work and things like this?
I have a day job that keeps me pretty busy. I'm a corporate recruiter.
Oh, nice.
Basically interviewing people all day long. So
that's fun.
Isn't it though? so that's what I do.
I'm a software engineer, so I've done that for years. Computer science background. Hence the Python program that play tested the game 10,000 times.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a moment too, because I have some questions on that, which is pretty cool. So neither, I assumed one of you guys would have been like a paleontologist or worked at had some kind of association with a museum or something, but you guys have nothing remotely related to that, or do you?
I'll let Brett take that one.
Yeah, kind of. So this is the book that my grandfather got me from the library in LA.
Nice. It
was written in the 1950s, and it was a dinosaur book that I read ever since I was like 6 years old. Of course, he probably should have returned it, but so I've always been into dinosaurs and stuff. That was my any kind of birthday gift or something. It was like, I want a dinosaur book. So my family always did that. And then when I went off to college, I went to UC Berkeley, and they have a really great paleontology department. So all my electives were like paleontology, geology, and all that kind of stuff. So it's always been a passion on the side.
Nice. And so then how did, so you guys start gaming together, right? So, meet friends like most people do. And I got a game night I go to on a weekly basis as well. And I've made a lot of great friends there. How do you take that leap from playing games and socializing to say, you know what, I think, well, why don't we create a game together? How did that come together?
Well, that story goes from Lex and I becoming friends, and me having done a personality test and figuring out that I'm an INTP, and Lex had done one and he's an INTJ, and those apparently are some of the best combos of working together on projects.
Okay.
So I'm like, hey, do you want to work on a board game? Like, we should totally do this.
Yeah, the science dictates that we should be working together.
Exactly.
So, that sounds great to me. So yeah, so it's true. It's pretty much how it started. And Brett was saying, I have this idea, want to work on a game about dinosaurs, and we just started spitballing. And then the pandemic happened. So we had lots of time on our hands to talk about these things and to throw ideas out there and really embrace the virtual for a lot of this. It might be getting ahead of ourselves, but Brett was able to very successfully teach himself how to set up Tabletop Simulator. We did a whole bunch of testing.
Lots of play testing.
Thankfully, Brett is definitely the tech guy for for our company effectively. So, but yeah, it just also really started from there.
For anybody out there listening, what I would say is that Tabletop Simulator is and we've talked about it many times on the podcast. It really is a great way to play test and prototype your game, right? So you can keep iterating by just re-uploading the newest artwork, right? So you can get some feedback from some friends and family and whoever you have to play test. Make some changes that night. The next day, your game is updated. That is vastly superior to the classic, printing and cutting out with paper, with scissors and taping things and gluing things together. So
we have those too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It started that way, but Tabletop Simulator, to your point, made it so much easier to rapidly prototype.
Yeah.
And it was that once we did it that way, I was like, that's the way we'll do it from now on for any kind of rapid prototyping.
And what I'd also say about that too is that I don't want people out there thinking that you have to be a tech genius to use Tabletop Simulator. If you know how to use YouTube, you should be able to figure out Tabletop Simulator. Like literally just Google Tabletop Simulator 101, or if there's something specific you're trying to figure out, just Google it. You can do probably 95% of what people can do on Tabletop Simulator very, very quickly. It is very user-friendly, and it is just an amazing tool. So it's cool to see that you guys took advantage of that. With your play group that you guys were playing, like, did you actually have a larger group that you're playing with?
Yeah, and we were able to not just play test with those folks, but there are folks that also from my expatriate Philadelphia, all my friends back in Philadelphia were able to ask them to join in ships through Tabletop Simulator. So it's great because it's not just virtual. It's great because it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, just as long as you're awake, to be able to play test. So but then also we're throughout this entire process for just information gathering, making connections. We formed a relationship with the Southwest Paleontological Society as well.
Cool.
And we're able to get some play testing with the technical experts to get their opinions and get their thoughts. But so it's been really beneficial using Tabletop.
What was some of the feedback that, like, when you talked to the professionals, like, what was some of the feedback that they gave you? Were they very receptive at the beginning, or was there some things where they said, guys, like, you got to change this. This doesn't make any sense, like, from our perspective?
Well, first off, they're incredibly excited because it wasn't a game about dinosaur wrestling matches, so for lack of a better term. So it's actually about paleontology, doing the work, finding fossils, conducting research, and publishing papers. And that's so much of what paleontology is. So that type of feedback was incredibly positive. But then working specifically with technical consultants, digging into the details, they were able to steer us in some directions that we didn't know we need to go into. There's some corrections that we had to make as a result.
So what's the big one? What's the big correction you made based on the feedback?
The biggest correction, which caused the most change to graphics and stuff like that, was we have 4 different types of specimens in the game, which is the clades or types of dinosaurs. And we have marine reptiles, because those aren't technically dinosaurs. We have theropods. We have sauropods. Covered a large group of your, duck-billed dinosaurs, all that kind of stuff. But we found out that some of those were technically that we had in the game were not ornithopods. They were of another clade that encompassed all those, which is the Genosaur. Completely changed that thing, which changed all our rule book, changed all our graphics. So some major stuff like that. Most of our other stuff was like, oh, the dates might be wrong on this, or this one might not be found in this location, or this formation is really not in this state. But that was the major one that was like, oh, okay, that changes like 50% of our cards had to change graphically because of that.
Well, it's kind of important though too, and I think it's
accuracy super important for this game.
Anytime you can get subject matter experts to weigh in on a game is always a good thing, right? And you're seeing a lot more of this in the industry, I find, as well, where people get even cultural experts, right? So they'll have a game, and if it's based on a certain region or a certain classic culture, they'll actually have people who are experts in that area consult them, right, to make sure that A, they're getting it right, and B, they're not being offensive, right? So I know it's tough to be offensive in something like dinosaurs, but certainly you can get it wrong, right? And
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and the way you've approached it, and we mentioned this a little bit just before we went on air here. What I was impressed with this game and what attracted me to it was a very different angle than I've seen with classical dinosaur games, right? So paleontology games are usually about digging stuff or, collecting things, and they're usually kind of simple, very kid-like mechanics, I find, in a lot of those types of games, which is okay. They're meant for kids and meant as family games. This one here, where you're kind of taking it from a paleontologist career angle, I thought was quite enticing, right? So you're trying to actually publish papers, and you're collecting fossils, but also I think you have like these research cubes or something like that, and as a combination of different things, as you're kind of placing your workers that you around the board. To kind of advance your career, I guess, as a paleontologist, or eventually publish enough papers that it triggers the end of the game. Another thing that was kind of cool in there too is you had like scientists, and then you have like your students, I guess, right? And if you're bumping somebody, if you're senior to them, you're bumping them, right? And and the junior guys can't bump the senior guys, which I thought was kind of fun. So yeah, it got me really excited when I saw it. Maybe I'm going to share on my screen the actual your Kickstarter page. First of all, I just want to congratulate you guys. You have still 12 days ago, but you've already hit, I'm going to put this in Canadian dollars because it's the only way I can see it, almost $32,500 on a $31,500 goal. So you've crossed the threshold. That must be very exciting for you guys. I'm sure it's brought a lot of relief.
Yeah,
and
that's the right word for it.
Yeah, it's never fun to do those. Be chasing kind of the dragon at the end, right? So, so good for you guys on that. Still 12 days to go. Walk us through kind of the essence of how you play this game. So again, I have it on my screen here, and I'm going to kind of scroll over as you're kind of talking to the game, hopefully by memory, if that's cool.
Yeah, so Brett, you always do such a good job at that one. So I'm going to put you on.
You want to put me on the spot? Okay.
Yep.
Basically, you're leading a paleontology department, and the three types of workers you have are your paleontologist, your grad student, and your field assistant, which you then place out on the different areas of the board to gather fossil cubes or research and that kind of stuff. So the field expedition is the one where you would go to gain your fossil cubes, which are going to be of the three time periods of the Mesozoic, which are your Triassic, which are the purple, your Jurassic, the blue, and Cretaceous, or the green. And then going there allows you to draw a field expedition card that you will then turn over that will give you different colored dice to roll, and that's how you generate those fossil cubes. The university library is where you'll generate the white research cubes, and each specimen card of a dinosaur or marine reptile will require a certain amount of those to pay back to the supply when you go to the publishing journal and then turn your specimens into published holotypes. And then let's see, the last location, specimen lab lets you get more of those cards. And then the last location on the board is the museum collections, which you can then exchange fossils if you're not getting the right kind of colors or that kind of thing. And then everybody starts with a personal objective, which will be additional way to get victory points besides the published specimens. And that's usually where you're trying to get like certain types of, like you might need to get is published theropods or published sauropods. And then the last way to get victory points at the end of the game is the global objectives, which are kind of a semi-collaborative thing where you as a group of paleontologists are furthering the science by figuring out stuff about cladistics or systematics and all that kind of stuff. The goal was kind of to put enough stuff in there to where people would be like, if they know a lot about paleontology, they'll go, oh, I get where this is going. And if they don't, they might be like, cladistics, what's that? And then look it up online and kind of learn something about the field.
So I'm going to start with something very basic, and this might seem like a dumb question. We're going to ask it anyways. What is a holotype?
A holotype is the first published specimen. It's the first specimen that describes that new species. So any kind of, so in publishing, the first description in publishing of a new species, the skeleton or the specimen they used is called the holotype.
That's cool. And was this something that was kind of the name from the beginning? Was that always the intent, or is it something through your research you're like, oh, that'd be a cool name for the game?
that's been the name from the beginning for sure. Ever since that idea came, I think Lex was like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "Holotype." So
I've never heard that word. Let me do a search on that. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's doesn't the holotype board game doesn't come up at all. Let's do that. So, yeah, that's about one of the only things that hasn't that hasn't changed since the development of the game. To be honest, there was a lot of the game has evolved. I guess is to
yeah, mechanically.
yeah, mechanically it's evolved a lot. It's started one direction, we went another one. Turned out the worker placement was the best approach. So, and we just took it from there.
The one thing I would say, and the words, it's tough when you describe. So for people listening versus seeing, but I think it's important to point out that while it sounds very sciencey, for lack of a better word, it certainly seems accessible, if that's fair. Right. The worker placement. I'm showing the graphics again on the screen here, and I mean the artwork is great. It seems pretty intuitive on the playing. You can probably draw some similarities to other game types that under other themes. Standard worker placements, quite frankly. So I just want to kind of throw that out because I think it's important to note that this seems very accessible to me. Like, this is a game I think that anybody that has any interest in dinosaurs could probably pick up fairly easily and play, and they're probably actually going to learn some stuff along the way. But it's not scary. It does definitely seem approachable. Is that fair, or was that by design?
Oh, absolutely, and that's very deliberate by design for a couple of reasons. First off, we wanted to make sure that the game was pretty much icon driven. So everything that on the board, there'll be an explanation as far as it'll say publishing journal, but what the workers can do, because each worker can do something a little bit differently too.
Mm-hmm.
That's all listed out on the board. So we wanted to make it accessible that way. We wanted to make it accessible with the icons of the diets. So carnivore versus herbivore, the various clades, accessible that way. But then also we very deliberately wanted to make it, we've penned it a light strategy game.
Yeah.
So it's accessible in that way too, where we didn't want to just make it for the hobby gamer, of where it's like explaining the rules and at 45 minutes, all right, any questions? We didn't want to make it that kind of game.
Yeah.
We wanted to make it very accessible to
new gamers.
Make it very family friendly, and also to, in some respects, make it a little bit of a gateway type of game into other games, so that parents who are our age, who have kids, they want to share their love of gaming with their kids. So as opposed to introducing them to 18XX, love those games, but very, very crunchy.
Yeah.
This way, it's a little bit more accessible to them. It's worker placement. They could pick it up quickly, and also we have it so that a lot of the rules can be taken out to even simplify the game more. So that way, really young kids with adult supervision, with at least telling them how to do things, they can place their workers, publish dinosaurs, and then that's wonderful, hooray! And then the person with the most points wins, as opposed to some of the other crunchy parts too. So accessibility is huge when designing the game.
Yeah, for sure. Like you guys explained it. I think it was in there's a video on your page. It's like 15 minutes long where you explain it and play like a couple rounds. So literally the explanation I think was like 5 minutes. Like, it was very quick. So very, very easily to explain how to play this game, I think, if somebody's looking to play for the first time. In that video, was it is in in a museum or something? Where did you guys film that?
That was actually thanks to our the good friends that we made through the Southwest Paleontological Society. That was at the Arizona Museum of Natural History in Mesa, Arizona. So we were able to owe a couple favors, and they were very, very nice of us, very nice to allow us access on a Sunday morning and film for 4 hours for 15 minutes of footage. That's the way it goes. But yeah, it was we could not have been happier with that opportunity at that location. So it's we're thrilled.
I think
Yeah,
that's one of the,
that's an amazing location. Like their dioramas and all the stuff they have there is really cool.
it's probably
Yeah.
one of the coolest backgrounds I think I've seen somebody do on a Kickstarter, with an intro page. And then your actual, who did your animation for you on your actual, like the main video for the Kickstarter page? You did the animation. Wow.
Yeah, I have learned way too much Photoshop, Illustrator, and Blender in the last 2 years. So
Wow.
yeah, that was me.
That is crazy. So so you're obviously a technical guy, right?
Mhm.
And so talk to me about the Python system. First of all, explain to people what it is, and then talk about why you used it.
So Python is just another programming language. It's really well suited to mocking stuff up really quickly and doing a lot of stuff really fast, number crunching and stuff. And the reason I developed it was we wanted to, in developing the game, there's a ton of math and spreadsheets that go into probability and the point values to get the balance right. We want a game that's well balanced so that someone's just not does a particular strategy and just runs away with it and there's nothing that can be done. So a lot of those math assumptions were done. We play tested. We realized that something's broken. We go back and change them and we fix them. And then when we got to the point, okay, we really want to see what happens over a huge data set of, is this objective broken, or is this personal objective, whoever gets this one is just going to get too many points, that kind of thing, or is the probability messed up? So I wrote this program in Python to basically play the game thousands and thousands of times within a minute so that we could compile this kind of data and then look at it and go, okay, is anything out of whack? What do we need to adjust and that kind of stuff? And what's shown on the Kickstarter is when the graphics are running. So it's playing that thing maybe, a couple games a second, but once you turn the graphics off, it plays like 10,000 in like 2 minutes. And then it's just a matter of spitting out the data and making it into a graphical form that we can actually get something useful out of it.
Yeah, and we had a lot of suspicions about how the numbers worked and how the points were, and okay, if we went this direction, could you win as opposed to going this direction? But with that, it gave us the numbers and data that we needed to verify that no, one direction is not better than another. Because I think it was about 50-50 completing global objectives versus holotypes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing in the game. There's two ways the games can end. You either everybody combined published a certain number of holotypes, and then the game's instantly over, or a certain amount of global objectives are filled, and then the game can be over. What's interesting is in a 2-player mode, that doesn't happen as often because the more cards, they're higher levels to get those out, and you want to be able to have that end case not happen really quick at a 5-player game, and there's a lot more published cards for that to happen. So it was interesting seeing the data from that. It was like, okay, in a 2-player game, that end condition only happens about 5% of the time, and then it goes up in a 3-player, and then it goes up in a 4-player, and then in the 5-player game, it's about 50-50, where half the time it's ending because there's been enough holotypes published, and then half the time it's ending because enough global objectives. So that's what's interesting about a 5-player is you're like, as you're getting closer to like the end game based on the track, you're like, but it still might end sooner based on the global objectives, and I got to make sure I play that right. So that was a really interesting thing once we got the numbers from that to see what that breakdown was.
That's crazy. It's crazy. Did you actually make any changes based on that data, or the data verify that you're kind of on the right track?
It verified most of them. There were a couple things that it changed, and it was very slight value changes. It was like, okay, we want to bump this up, 5-10%, that kind of thing. But most of the major math changes came from in-person play testing, and then seeing that and going back and adjusting our formulas in our spreadsheets to reflect what was happening.
So this being your first title that you guys have done, what was one of the bigger sources for you going in for getting your backers? Like, where did you guys go first? Was it your immediate community, or did you have any kind of society you could tap into at all? Or
There were some. We'd reached out to other paleontological societies to share that interest. But we do have a Facebook page that we started as well.
Oh, nice.
And we probably should have started a little bit earlier than we should have, but and an Instagram as well. So it's Brexwerx Games. That's what it is for both. But that's really where we started getting the word out and doing, the Facebook advertising and really just getting the word out that the game was on its way.
So one of the biggest challenges I've seen with games in general is the assumption, I think, for a lot of people would be, and I'll take example as Nutty Squirrels, is a game, Nutty Squirrels: The Oakwood Forest, that we had published last year. And, the assumption going in is squirrel enthusiasts will get behind this game and love it, right? So you want to reach out to all these different groups that are squirrel enthusiasts. The challenge is not all squirrel enthusiasts play board games. Right. And even those that do may not have any idea what Kickstarter is or how to back something on Kickstarter. And it's something that's kind of new and foreign to them. And you can kind of get into that trap to focus too hard on lean too hard into some of those channels where I think, like you're saying, the classic Facebook, getting out to people who are involved in Kickstarters who may have some adjacent interests, like someone like myself, like in paleontology and love dinosaurs and things like that from a kid, and hoping to kind of tap into that group and make sure you get that kind of Venn diagram where they also are the ones that interconnect and are the ones that also are familiar with the Kickstarter platform. Because it is a bit of a beast for someone who hasn't ever been on it before. I remember my first game and I had family members and they're like, I can't figure this thing out. I don't know what to do. Right? Can you give me an instruction sheet on how to do a pledge? And for me, it seemed pretty intuitive, but it wasn't, right? For people that haven't done it for the first time. So yeah, it's crazy. So where do you guys go from here? So after this game is done, so now that I know you're not paleontologist, I assume that maybe you have some other ideas in gaming that you may want to get into. Are you going into another theme, another direction, or is this one going to have other iterations, or kind of what's your plans for Brexwerx?
We're gamers, so we have lots of ideas for lots of games. Yeah, it's like some of them are half baked, some of them are not. That would be outside of Holotype, but people have rightfully or correctly been asking the question. So this is Mesozoic North America. Will there be Mesozoic Europe? And the answer is yes, because it's the T-Rex can only be found in North America. So it can't be found in Europe, can't be found elsewhere. But Europe and Asia, they have their own unique sets. So there's lots of opportunity for not just different specimens, but then also different opportunities to create different rules that are more appropriate and different mechanics. So in the Holotype theme, there's plenty of opportunity to explore the other continents for sure.
I think if even you could take this, like as I'm hearing you talk about that, even archaeology in general, right? Like if you want to take the same idea of publishing papers, doing digs, research papers, I mean, you could do that with Egyptology, right? You could do that with, digging in Greece, Pompeii. Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like you've kind of, the mechanics you figured out could be applied to many different things, even outside of dinosaurs in other iterations in the future, I guess, if you wanted to, right?
Oh, no, easily. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially with that science-based bend to it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely be looking for it for myself. But good. Guys, I just want to congratulate you again on what an amazing campaign you've had here. Again, 12 days left. If people want to follow this campaign, I am putting a link directly in the show notes. Click on it, check it out. If you don't want to follow the link, just go on to Kickstarter and type in Holotype. You'll find the campaign, check it out. At the very least, watch the video of these guys doing the museum because it is cool. And the fact that you guys were able to pull that off, I thought was just absolutely awesome. So I want to wish you all the best in this coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today, too. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, Produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.